Hi, welcome back to part 18, The Boy at the Back of the Class. We're going to be reading chapter 11, The Game of Scrabble. After hearing Ahmet's story and seeing his pictures, I was bursting with lots of new questions. So were Tom and Josie and Michael. But we knew that we couldn't ask Ahmet anything. We should write them down, suggested Josie. Then maybe after the holidays, Ahmet will have some more of the pieces put together, and Mrs. Khan will think it's okay for us to ask him. We all agreed. So when I got home that night, I took out my old list of questions, and after crossing out the ones I had answers to, I wrote the new questions out in my very best handwriting, just to make sure that we wouldn't forget any of them. This is what my list looked like, my 11 questions. So he's crossed out the first two, which said, where did you have to run away from and what language did you speak? He's still got, who's the woman in the red scarf? And then most of the others are crossed out apart from do you have a best friend? He also wrote 5 new questions. Number 1, what is your sister's name and where is she now? Why wasn't your mum in the last picture? What happened to the cat? How long did it take to walk to France? Who were the bullies who dropped bombs on your house? After I'd finished writing them out, I put the list in my front pocket of my rucksack. It would have to wait until the holiday was over to find out if Ahmet was ready to answer any of them. I know everyone in school likes the holidays, but I don't. Not really. Mum still has to work, and she can't afford to send me to a holiday camp or for extra activities, so I have to spend most of my time with Miss Abby. Usually, Michael and Josie's parents come and take me to their house for a day, but Michael's parents were taking him on holiday to France, and Josie was going camping, and Tom and his brothers were visiting friends and family by the seaside, so there was no one to play with this holiday. The week felt extra long and extra boring because London had what Mum calls a grey day week. That's when all the days are so cold and grey and wet and blustery that you don't want to get out of your pyjamas or your bed, and the whole week feels as if it's one long grey day that you can't wait to be over. But on the Sunday morning, just before school opened again, Mum was reading the newspaper and she was trying to decide what we should do for our Sunday adventure when the phone rang. Mum picked it up and then put it back down again. She was biting her lip and frowning. That meant she'd forgotten something important, and she was feeling angry at herself. Darling, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. But that was your Uncle Lenny on the phone, reminding me that he's coming to lunch today. I jumped up in excitement. With your Aunt Christina and baby Jacob, she added. I sat back down and made a face. Can't Uncle Lenny just come on his own? I asked. Mum shook her head. No, he can't. Your aunt and Jacob haven't been here for a while, so it's nice that they want to come. And then noticing that I was still making a face, she added, and guess what? Uncle Lenny is bringing lunch. Roast chicken, your favourite. And he says he wants a Scrabble match, so you're to set up the Scrabble board immediately. I jumped up and I ran to my bedroom to get the Scrabble board from under my bed. I love Scrabble more than any other board games, because it's the only game that I don't ever get bored playing. Dad always used to let me win by placing his letters in silly places so that he would get the lowest points. But Mum and Uncle Lenny never play low-scoring words on purpose, because Mum says that helping me to win is cheating. She just let me use the dictionary though, because otherwise it wouldn't be fair. After all, she and Uncle Lenny are older and cleverer, and they know lots more words than a 9 3/4-year-old would ever know. And just like that, I didn't mind Aunt Christina and Jacob coming at all, because there was nothing I loved better than eating my Uncle Lenny's roast chicken, except for playing Scrabble with him. Just like Josie, Uncle Lenny is in my memories too. When Dad died, I remember him being at the hospital with us and hugging Mum and me a lot. This was when he started calling me his brave little tiger. I don't know why, because I didn't feel in the tiniest bit brave. But I didn't mind, because after the funeral he was the only person who stayed behind and he helped Mum to sort everything out. None of my other uncles or aunts who visited us that day came back to see me and Mum again. Mum's friends try to visit us when they can, and Josie's mum is always asking us if we need any help. But they're busy with work, just like Mum is. Sometimes I think most of the people who came to the funeral were all really witches and wizards who just appeared out of thin air, just so that they could eat a buffet and shake their heads a lot before disappearing again. It was good that they disappeared, because most of them smelled like old mothballs, and they liked to pinch my cheeks until they hurt. That's another reason I love Uncle Lenny. He's never ever pinched my cheeks or smelled like mothballs. He smells like warm bread most of the time and freshly baked cookies most of the time. He's a taxi driver and he only works at night. He loves his job and he tells us the funniest stories about all the different kinds of people who have jumped into the back of his car. Like the time a famous actress got in and ordered him to drive around for a whole hour just so that she could get some sleep. Or the time a large Italian family spent the whole ride silently fighting over a single portion of fish and chips. Whenever my Uncle Lenny visits us, he always brings a large bag of food shopping and a chocolate bar just for me. He doesn't usually come with my Aunt Christina because she doesn't like us. I don't know why, but it's okay because I don't like her either. She's very beautiful and she's always perfectly dressed with perfect hair and perfect makeup. But she wrinkles up her nose whenever she sees something she doesn't like, which is nearly all of the time. So she always looks as if she's smelled a bag of bad eggs. She has a fake smile too. It's one of those smiles that shows a lot of teeth, but which never travels to any other body parts. I don't trust people who can't smile with their whole face. It means they're trying to hide something from you. Fake smiles always make me want to try and get as far away from the fake smiler as possible. Their son Jacob is okay, but he's only 2 and he likes to break things. So I try to hide all my best toys from him whenever he comes over. After I finished setting up the Scrabble board, I helped Mum tidy up the house and was making my bed sheets extra straight when the doorbell rang. All right. How's my favourite nearly 10-year-old doing? Shouted Uncle Lenny when I opened the door. He always says that, even though I know I'm only nearly 10 years old. I'm the only nearly 10-year-old he knows, which means he can't have any other favourites. Okay, I shrugged. Only okay? He asked, bending down, looking me in the eye. Might need to send you to the smile doctor. I smiled wider. That's better. He ruffled my hair and gave me a kiss on the cheek. Then he headed into the kitchen with 2 large grocery bags. Afternoon, said my Aunt Christina. Her lips were pinched together, and she was wearing so much perfume that it made my nose tickle. Jacob's asleep, so you'll have to play with him later, she said matter-of-factly, as she carried Jacob in through the door and stuck out her pointy face at me. I stood on tiptoes and gave her a kiss, and she pulled away quickly. Right, what have you been up to then? Asked Uncle Lenny as he came and steered me to the kitchen table. I think he must be so used to driving his taxi that he liked to drive people around too. Nothing, I suggested. Do you want to play Scrabble with me now, Uncle Lenny? We'll have a game after lunch, my little tiger, he smiled. I'm not on until 5 today. Darling, why don't you tell Uncle Lenny about your new friend? Asked Mum as she set the table. Oh yeah, the pomegranate boy, said Uncle Lenny. Your mum told me. What's happening there then? Lots, I said. I began to tell him all about the big fight and the mysterious plant pot murder and the great baked beans bag trap and Ahmet's story. As we ate our lunch, I told them about the bombs and the fires and the orange boat and the tents, and Ahmet's cat and the railway track and the wall with the barbed wire on it. Uncle Lenny shook his head and muttered, "Poor man," every few minutes, and Mum nodded along, looking sad, but Aunt Christina looked bored. Then, just as I was about to tell them about my new list of questions, Aunt Christina said, "It doesn't surprise me that you would want to be friends with a refugee kid at all, sweetheart. You'd have lots of things in common with him, what with your gran being a refugee too." Uncle Lenny and Mum looked up sharply. I can't even bear to think about it. Imagine being a war refugee back in the day, before they got all the loads of benefits and houses. Uncle Lenny looked up angrily and was about to say something when just then Jacob began to cry. Aunt Christina jumped up and with a sniff she said, "Oh dear, seems he's christened the nappy again," before rushing out of the room. "Mum, is that true?" I said, looking at Mum so hard that it felt as if my eyes were about to pop out of my head. "Was Gran a refugee too?" "All yours," muttered Uncle Lenny as he got up and walked over to one of the shopping bags. "I'll get dessert, shall I?" Mum looked up at me for a moment. "Yes, sweetheart, it is. Your Grandma Jo. We went to see her with Daddy when you were little. Do you remember her?" I nodded. Not because I really remembered anything, but because I had looked at the photographs hundreds of times. I was 5 and it was the last time Mum and Dad and me had been on holiday in a real-life plane. We went to a town called Salzburg, which is in a country called Austria, because that's where Dad lived before he moved to England. He used to talk about the mountains and the rivers and the way the birds always seemed to follow him around. He looked so happy in the photographs, and so did Mum. I seemed to be crying in most of the photos, so I'm not sure if I was happy or not. I don't really remember anything about the trip except for the large green wooden caravan Grandma Jo had in the back garden. Dad used to sleep in it in the summer holidays when he was a boy. My granddad had built it before he died, which is why Dad wanted to become a carpenter. There's a photo of me in it and Dad sitting on its steps, and it's the only photo where I'm not crying. Even then, I must have liked the idea of sleeping in a bright green caravan. Okay, bye.